It was right there. One play, one moment, one final chance to flip the entire story of the season. The Rams had clawed their way back. The stadium was holding its breath. And then silence. The clock hit 0, and with it, Los Angeles' Super Bowl dreams vanished into the Seattle night. Because after closing the gap to 31-27, the Rams' offense didn't just stall. It disappeared. And that's where this story gets uncomfortable, because the most productive player on the field is the one pointing the finger inward. Puka Nacua didn't dodge responsibility. He didn't deflect. He didn't hide behind stats or excuses or playoff cliches. He stood there after the loss, shoulders heavy, voice honest, and said the thing most stars never say out loud. I thought about the first third down. I couldn't come down with it. That sentence tells you everything you need to know about who Puka Nacua is. And why this loss hurts so much more than the final score suggests. Because the Rams didn't get blown out. They didn't look outmatched. They didn't get embarrassed. They lost a game they absolutely could have won. And that makes it sting differently. Let's rewind to how we got here. Seattle jumped ahead early, capitalizing on mistakes, momentum swings, and one catastrophic special teams error that tilted the entire game. Xavier Smith's muffed punt early in the second half handed the Seahawks a short field. They cashed it in. Touchdown. Just like that, the lead stretched to 24-13, and suddenly every Rams possession felt like it had to be perfect. And yet, somehow they kept fighting. Matthew Stafford kept firing. Kyren Williams kept grinding. And Puka Nacua? He was everywhere. 0.9 catches. 165 total yards. A touchdown. He burned Tariq Woolen, just 2 plays after Woolen taunted him. He turned short throws into explosive gains. He was the most dangerous player on the field for long stretches of this game. Statistically, this was a monster performance. Historically, it was even bigger. Puka Nacua now has 3 playoff games with at least 100 receiving yards. According to ESPN, that ties him with Tom Fears for the second most in Rams postseason history. The only man ahead of him? Isaac Bruce. Let that sink in. This is only Nacua's 3rd season. He also moved into second all-time in receiving yards through a player's first 3 seasons, passing Randy Moss. Randy Moss, one of the most gifted receivers the NFL has ever seen. And yet, none of that mattered in the locker room. Because when Nacua replayed the night in his head, he didn't see records. He didn't see highlight plays. He saw missed moments. He saw that third down early in the game. He saw a red zone opportunity that slipped away. He saw a safety look that he and Stafford weren't perfectly aligned on. He saw every inch, every second, every detail where the offense came up just short. All those moments kind of flash by your head, Nacua said. And I apologize to the defense for putting them down in those situations. That's not just accountability. That's leadership. And it's also a window into why the Rams' offense, for all its yardage, never truly found rhythm when it mattered most. Third down. That's the story hiding in plain sight. The Rams went 1 for 8 on third down. 1 conversion. 8 chances. In a playoff game. That's not a schematic footnote. That's the difference between winning and packing up lockers. They piled up 479 total yards, the second most Seattle allowed all season. Matthew Stafford threw for 374 yards, 3 touchdowns, and didn't turn the ball over once. On paper, that's a quarterback who did his job. So why did it feel like the offense was constantly fighting uphill? Because every drive came with friction. Every third down felt like a brick wall. And when the game tightened in the fourth quarter, that wall never cracked. The final sequence says it all. Stafford completes his last pass to Nacua. It's a good throw. It's a strong catch. But Nacua can't get out of bounds. The clock keeps running. Seconds bleed away. And before the Rams can regroup, it's over. No spike. No Hail Mary. No miracle. Just a quiet realization that this season is done. That's the moment people will remember. And unfairly, it's the moment that might get pinned on Puka Nacua by those who only see the final frame. But that would miss the bigger truth. Because this loss wasn't about one player. It wasn't about one pass. It wasn't even about one quarter. It was about margins. It was about special teams mistakes. It was about third down execution. It was about missed connections in high-leverage situations. And it was about a Seahawks team that capitalized when the Rams didn't. That's why this loss hurts more than most. Because the Rams were good enough. They weren't outclassed. They weren't rebuilding. They weren't lucky to be there. They had the firepower, the experience, and the star power to make a real run. And that's exactly why players like Kyren Williams described the feeling afterward as more frustrated than hurt. Frustration comes when you know you had it. When you know the door was open. When you know a few cleaner moments change everything. And no one feels that more than Puka Nacua. This is a receiver who has redefined expectations since the moment he stepped into the league. A fifth-round pick who plays like a first-round cornerstone. A young star who doesn't just want numbers, but responsibility. That's why his self-criticism matters. Because stars usually protect themselves after losses like this. They talk about team effort. They point to adversity. They say the right things. Puka didn't do that. He owned it. And that's why this moment could become something bigger than a playoff loss. Because how players respond to heartbreak defines their next leap. Isaac Bruce had his share of painful postseason exits before lifting a Lombardi trophy. Torrey Holt endured crushing defeats before becoming a legend. Even Matthew Stafford had to leave Detroit to rewrite his legacy. Every great Rams receiver has a moment like this in their story. A night where the stats shine, but the ending burns. The question now isn't whether Puka Nacua is elite. That's settled. The question is what this loss will turn into. Because players who internalize failure the way Nacua does don't stay the same. They evolve. They sharpen details. They demand more precision. They come back with an edge. And that should terrify the rest of the NFC. Because if this is the baseline, if this is the version of Puka Nacua that still feels like it wasn't enough, then the ceiling hasn't even come into view yet. The Rams, meanwhile, are left staring at an offseason full of hard evaluations. The offense moves the ball, but can it finish drives more consistently? Can the third down issues be solved through scheme, personnel, or chemistry? Can special teams mistakes be eliminated in games where every inch matters? These are not questions for a team blowing things up. These are questions for a team trying to take the next step, and that's the key takeaway from this loss. This wasn't the end of an era. It was a checkpoint. Seattle advances. They earned it. They capitalized on opportunities and made fewer mistakes. That's playoff football. But Los Angeles walks away knowing they belonged in this moment. Knowing they were dangerous. Knowing they were close. And knowing that their youngest star already carries himself like someone who plans to be back here again. Soon. So here's the real question. And it's one only Rams fans can answer honestly. Was this loss the result of missed execution, or the growing pain of a team on the verge of something bigger? Drop your take in the comments. Was Puka Nacua too hard on himself, or is this exactly the mindset that turns stars into legends? And here's the part nobody wants to talk about yet, but it matters, because this loss didn't just end a season. It exposed the thin line between being dangerous and being decisive. All night long, the Rams proved they could move the ball on Seattle. Chunk plays. Explosive routes. Stafford diagnosing coverages pre-snap and trusting his arm. On early downs, the offense looked fluid. Confident. In control. But the NFL doesn't judge you on early downs. It judges you on 3rd and 6. 3rd and 8. 3rd and goal from the 5 with the season breathing down your neck. And that's where everything tightened. Seattle knew where the pressure points were. They disguised looks. They forced hesitation. They made the Rams earn every inch. And when Los Angeles blinked, even for half a second, the opportunity was gone. That's not a lack of talent. That's timing. And timing is where championship teams separate themselves. This is why Puka Nacua's comments hit so hard. Because he wasn't lamenting effort. He was talking about synchronization. About being on the same page as Matthew Stafford when the margins are razor thin. That matters, because when a receiver at his level is already thinking like that, already obsessing over alignment, leverage, and split-second decisions, it tells you the growth curve isn't flattening anytime soon. Think about it. This is a player who defenses now build game plans around. Bracket coverage. Safety help. Physical corners testing him at the line. And still, he put up 165 yards in a playoff game. That's not accidental production. That's a skill set that travels. Which brings us to Stafford. Quietly, this was one of the most efficient playoff performances of his Rams tenure. No turnovers. Aggressive throws into tight windows. Complete command of the offense. And yet, the box score will never fully tell the story of how difficult some of these throws were. He gave his receivers chances. He trusted Nacua in contested spaces. He stretched the field vertically. And still, it wasn't enough. That's the cruelty of postseason football. You can play well, even great, and still walk away empty-handed. That's why this loss stings for veterans like Stafford. Because windows don't stay open forever. Every year becomes more precious. Every missed opportunity echoes louder. But it's also why this moment feels different for the younger core. Puka Nacua. Kyren Williams. A defense that fought until the final whistle despite being put in brutal field position situations. This group tasted how close it is, and that taste either breaks you or sharpens you. History tells us which direction players like Nacua usually go. Look around the league. The receivers who became legends didn't avoid pain, they metabolized it. Larry Fitzgerald had playoff heartbreak before becoming synonymous with postseason dominance. Davante Adams learned hard lessons in January before peaking as the most refined route runner in football. Even Cooper Kupp endured brutal losses before his Triple Crown season rewrote expectations. Moments like this don't fade. They linger. They show up in off-season workouts. They show up in film study. They show up in the way players demand precision from themselves and everyone around them. That's why Nacua apologizing to the defense matters so much. Because that's a receiver thinking beyond his stat line. That's a star understanding complementary football. Understanding that every missed third down puts stress on a defense that's already fighting uphill. That's not just maturity. That's franchise behavior. Now zoom out for a second. The Rams weren't supposed to be here this fast. This was a team many thought was transitioning. Reloading. Finding its next identity. Instead, they found it sooner than expected. They found it in a receiver who plays like he's always running out of time. In a quarterback who refuses to let the moment shrink him. And in a roster that doesn't flinch when the game turns ugly. That's why this loss feels less like an ending and more like an unfinished chapter. The Seahawks move on. Credit where it's due. They took advantage of the opening the Rams gave them. That's playoff football. But if you're being honest, if you watched that game without bias, you know these teams weren't separated by talent. They were separated by execution in a handful of moments. And those moments are teachable. Third down efficiency can improve. Red zone chemistry can sharpen. Special teams discipline can be cleaned up. Those are solvable problems. What's harder to find is heart. Accountability. Hunger. And Puka Nacua put all three on display in defeat. That's why Rams fans shouldn't walk away from this season discouraged. Disappointed? Absolutely. Frustrated? Without question. But hopeless? Not even close. Because teams that are truly done don't talk like this after losses. Their leaders deflect. Their stars disappear. Their locker rooms fracture. That didn't happen here. What happened was ownership. And ownership is the foundation of the next leap. So when this moment gets replayed months from now. When people talk about the play where Nacua couldn't get out of bounds, or the third down miss he can't stop thinking about, remember this. Those moments don't define him. They fuel him. And if you think a player who already passed Randy Moss statistically in his first 3 seasons is going to fade quietly into the off-season, you haven't been paying attention. This loss will live with him. And when players like that come back, they usually come back different, more precise, more demanding, more dangerous. That's the real story behind this Rams loss. Not failure, preparation. Now it's on the Rams to answer the only question that matters going forward. Will this moment be remembered as the ceiling or the turning point? Let me know what you think. Did this game expose fatal flaws in the Rams' offense? Or did it reveal a team that's one breakthrough away from a deeper run next year?